Trump, for all his flaws, did demonstrate that the thing that holds a stranglehold on power is not invulnerable, right? He did come from the outside, and he did show that there was a way in, and he was definitely a mixed bag. But for that, that's an indicator that there is a way to do this. And if we could get the right people, as you say, the people who aren't hungry for power, right? If you get those people into a position to actually steer, we might even have a shot.
Right. I mean, so we need like a social Alan Turing almost. I mean, somebody that understands the way the Enigma machine works, that if you can put in something predictable and then observe on the other side, you can understand how the entire apparatus works at that point, and then predict everything that comes out of it. And I think that would be a really good starting point. I mean, you do have to get people that are unwilling to be engaged. I mean, the free thinking mind, the first impulse, I think, when shit gets like this is like, fuck this, I'm just going to move into the woods, man. I don't have, like, I've got things to do, and I don't have time for this horse shit. And it is, every couple of generations we see where, people get dragged into shit that they probably didn't want to be in and turn out being pretty good at it. I don't know what that looks like today, though. I mean, the gears of American politics especially are so large, but yet so small at the same time. I mean, it's hard to narrow in on one point that would make a real difference.
Just one thing that you prompted me to think just then of, certainly we have both had the sense of like, let's just move to the rainforest. Let's just go back to the Amazon and stay there. But one of the characteristics, and we mentioned this in the book as well, of people whom you absolutely want on your team and would that more people were like this, is what we call Asch negative. So a reference to Solomon Asch's experiments from the, late 50s, early 60s, in which he had someone come into a room with a bunch of Confederates. They didn't know they were Confederates, and look at 3 lines and say, which of these lines is shortest? And the Confederates would give the wrong answer. It was just an obvious, simple, observable, factual question. Which of these 3 lines is shorter? And the majority of the time, the person who was the unwitting subject of an experiment, he thought he was, a subject of some different experiment, would conform to the wrong answer. Most people did not conform.
What do you think they did? Did they call into question what shortest meant, maybe?
No, what it really is an indication that for very good evolutionary reasons, human beings are very sensitive to being out of step, right? So imagine, an ancestor who suddenly says, hey, those gods in the sky that you are appealing to aren't real. Let's talk about physics. And the point is, the person may be right, but they are also in danger of upending their position in society. So the point is, being out of step for an ancestor is close kin to starving. So the point is, people are, what Solomon Asch discovered was that people are very sensitive to being out of step. And so
it's super interesting, though. So there have been a lot of repeats of this experiment. And what I've never seen, though, is that question asked. Do the Confederates get interviewed afterwards? What were you doing?
Well, the first place my weird ass brain went was maybe they meant shorter, like height wise or something like that. Because I'm just trying to figure out why somebody would think that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're doing them too much. You're giving them too much credit.
Wow.
The vast majority of people did not conform all the time, but the majority of people conformed some of the times to a patently wrong answer. And so what we argue in the book and elsewhere is be Asch negative. And there are times when you just need to go along, for sure. There are low stakes times, but in general, you have to be willing to look around you and go, well, this is going to be uncomfortable, but I object.
I think
that's not how I'm seeing it.
We definitely, there's some utility, though, to going with the grain, right? Like understanding how we've evolved. And I'm just talking about the physical world, not necessarily sociology or anything, but understanding the physical world, how we've evolved. If you, I think in a lot of ways, it makes sense to figure out how we're programmed, evolutionarily speaking, and experience and whatever else, to at least consider making that part of the physical things we do, right? Like a diet, for example. So, for example, if you picked up a new machine, I guess it's the blind watchmaker thing, but if you picked up a new machine and had no idea where it came from, but it clearly was designed for some purpose, you might be able to get some utility out of it just by guessing. But the peak utility you'll get out of it is using it for its intended purpose, right? Or unless you define some new purpose that was unforeseen before, but that would be, you would be using that thing to its optimal level. Now, the thing that the human mind is best at is pattern recognition, right? I think, if I'm asking rhetorically almost, but I think that's the thing that the human mind is best at. But we seem to be, that seems to have changed from spotting colors on snakes that are venomous, and now it went to seeing stuff in the clouds that isn't really there. And now it's seeing a lot of other stuff. It's like a broad spectrum cognitive dissonance at this point. The information is coming in and being immediately corrupted.
It's a pattern recognition system trapped in some version of the Truman Show.
Right. Yeah.
So you're right about the idea that sometimes the right thing to do is to go with the grain, right? That's absolutely, I mean, it's actually one of the key arguments in the book is that human beings have two phases, right? There's the go along with the narrative phase because that's what it makes sense to do. And there's the confront the narrative and figure out what comes next phase. And the trick is figuring out where you are. And unfortunately, there is some force that is trying to convince us that this is very much the go along phase when it is very much the, hey, wake up and recognize we don't know what to do next phase.